What's going on, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, and today I was so fortunate enough to attend the Black Widow press conference over Zoom, of course, not in person yet. I can't wait till they start doing them in person again, but it was awesome to see Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Rachel Weisz, Kate Shortland, and Kevin Feige talk about Black Widow since we've been waiting for it for such a long time. And the cast really is great together on and off screen in the film. You can tell that the cast has a lot of chemistry with each other, which makes for a really good film. So there is a lot to go over from this press conference, and I think if you are very excited for Black Widow, you'll enjoy what the cast had to say. I am going to kind of go out of order of the questions that were asked during the press conference because I want to talk about David Harbour specifically, because to me, he's kind of the comedy of the film. His character, Red Guardian, is a really good character. And for those of you who may not be aware, I did get to pre-screen Black Widow a couple of days ago, so I have seen the film. So Sarah Spain from ESPN was the host and commentator for this press conference, and she asked David Harbour how he establishes the line between seriousness and humor in comedy. And his reply was fantastic. He said, "What's really funny about it is that it hatches from the same egg, the pathos and also the humor of this character. He is filled with grief over the choices that he's made, like emotionally, spiritually, and nutritiously, because obviously he's not in that good of shape anymore." But he continues to say that the comedy itself comes out of the ego that is built to defend the remorse. That's inherently silly. That's inherently funny. So in other words, he says he has to be bombastic because he can't stop and feel these things. You know, all of his failures. So he builds around him kind of a psychotic world where he is the hero. And that's where he says that's inherently silly and inherently funny. Then he goes on to say also the family dynamics themselves are just so fun. There's almost a traditional shot of us all around a table where we're all in super suits. I found us all falling into this cliche roles and then riffing off them. That was really fun and satisfying as well. And it really is. You know, you have these super people. You have 3 Black Widows, 3 highly trained assassins, and the Red Guardian, who is a super soldier. You know, the Russian Captain America. And we've all seen this part in the trailers. They all just kind of sit down and have like a family moment, and it is kind of inherently funny, but it's also a great emotional scene that adds to the dynamic of what we're watching. As the press conference continued, Scarlett Johansson was asked how she felt to welcome new people to the Marvel family through the Black Widow cast, in which she replied, "It's exciting because I'm partial. I love our Marvel family and I know how special it is and how special experiences are making these films. So I'm just excited for other actors to come in because I hope, they all feel similarly. It's wonderful to see people come into things excited and wide eyes and get to experience the incredible world of Marvel and making these huge productions. We have all been a part of big productions before, but I think because Marvel feels so familial, it's just a unique, warm, inviting place. It's just a fun thing to share." And that says a lot about Marvel and Disney, you know, huge companies, huge productions, but at the heart of it all, it's still very warm and welcoming and calm. And I personally think that's why they can make such good films. Just comfortability on the set and in the writer's room. Now, I know a lot of people have personally asked me about the fight scenes of the film, and I do think that they are really great. I like the hand-to-hand combat that we see. There's one-on-one fights, there's big chase scenes, there's group fights, and director Kate Shortland was asked that while crafting these fight scenes if she looked at previous MCU films for influence on the style. And what she said was different fights had different hearts to them. Say we're looking at the fight on the bridge with Taskmaster. She's trying to use her skill set, but the character she's fighting, he can do what she can do, basically. Scarlett can't use those skills. What we tried to do in other fights was to really mess it up, and it became like a street fight. With her sister, she's up against a formidable opponent, so those fights became messy and raw, and that was really fun. And I can attest to that. Those fights that get messy, they are really fun, and they're really awesome to watch. I personally think that the fights, to me, were the coolest parts of the film. Even between Natasha and Yelena, that was one of the best fights of the film. And I'm glad they put a lot of effort into understanding what the fight actually is, and I'm glad these fights did become messy. Now, a really fun question that was asked to David Harbour and Rachel Weisz was, which other Marvel hero would you like your character to team up with? David Harbour, after sarcastically stating that nobody is on Red Guardian's level, said that he would love to team up with Anthony Mackie's Captain America. As we know, the Red Guardian is essentially the Russian Captain America. And in the film, we learn how he feels about Steve Rogers' Captain America. And I think a movie with Anthony Mackie's Captain America and David Harbour's Red Guardian would be absolutely hilarious and awesome to watch. I also would really love a Red Guardian solo movie, which they briefly mentioned but didn't really talk about. David made a joke like, "Kevin, are you listening?" I don't think there's any serious talks about this at Marvel Studios right now, but I for sure would love to see a Red Guardian film. There's a lot of story to tell there. In fact, David Harbour says, you have this big 25-year gap that we don't know. We don't know what happened in Red Guardian's life. He has all these stories about his life and what went on. They are questionable about what's real. I do think the classic Cold War thing is a really fun and funny dynamic between these two guys and the fact that they basically came up as nuclear warheads in an arms race together. So again, I would love to see that. And then Rachel Weisz said the Hulk, which after you see the movie, you can see why this would be a pretty interesting choice. And no, I am not stating that the Hulk or Bruce Banner is in the movie. They are not. Now here's a very interesting question that I think fans would like to know. Kevin Feige was asked if we should expect more prequels. And here's what he said. This film and this story is a particular case for Natasha, but the notion of exploring the past, present, and future of the MCU is certainly in the cards for all of our characters. Which is absolutely fantastic news for the heroes that don't get their own solo films and we don't really see the entire origin story play out. It would be really cool to see prequels. Even for Yelena Belova herself, it would be nice to see a lot more of her experience in the Red Room as a Black Widow. The fact that prequels are on the table for Kevin Feige says that there's a lot of potential for the MCU. Then Scarlett Johansson was asked, how did the story for Black Widow come about? And I was actually a little bit surprised with her answer as to when they decided to do a Black Widow film. She stated, "We started talking about this film as more of a serious possibility when we were doing Infinity War. We already knew what the end game was for Natasha. We wanted to make sure that was a choice she made actively, that it felt like she had resolved then. So knowing that, we had to work backwards so she could get to a place where that was possible. We knew that in this film, she had to evolve to a place where she was moving forward in her life and had resolved the trauma from her past. That she felt like a different person moving forward, if that makes sense. It was a very weird way of working. Maybe that is always the case with a prequel. I've never done anything like that. And that makes sense to me. To me, that's a very interesting way to approach a film. You already know the character's end game, as she says. We know that in Avengers Endgame, she's going to die. So in Black Widow, the story is about building up her character to be in a good enough place to where everything about her past is already taken care of and she feels comfortable sacrificing herself. And that's what Black Widow is really about, clearing up those loose ends. Now, I know a lot of people are wondering about Yelena Belova, and she truly is a great character in this film. Florence Pugh did an amazing job playing her. And one of the questions that was asked to Florence Pugh was, how do you approach Yelena's connection to Natasha and make sure we understand it, but also make Yelena a character of her own? In which she said, from the get-go, it was very obvious that they have this connection and they have this relationship, and ultimately, despite her skill set, she is that wonderfully annoying younger sister that says all the right things at all the wrong times. She would go on to praise director Kate Shortland for giving her the freedom to figure out how Yelena thinks and how she moves, what she wears. Florence says that, I think for me, that was such a fun part of this character. She really comes out of the Red Room and can start life, and she can buy clothes, and she can buy the vest that has a lot of pockets. Don't worry, that will be explained in the movie. And she says that she had so much freedom to discover who Yelena was that Yelena really does become her own character and does flourish by the end of the film. And she also complimented Scarlett Johansson for being so welcoming and for being so giving and really making it a comfortable space. Now, a big final question that was asked to Scarlett was, what trait does Scarlett Johansson want people to remember about Natasha Romanoff? She initially jokingly responds about her pose, the classic Black Widow poses that we've seen her do throughout the MCU, which the Black Widow film actually addresses in a pretty hilarious way. But then on a more serious note, she says, I think Natasha has a lot of integrity. She's a big character. She's not afraid to admit when she's wrong. She's endearing that way. She's curious about herself and curious about other people. I think it makes her stand out. And it definitely does. It's an incredible story arc, Black Widow's, if you think about it. She goes from being a Russian spy and assassinating people to a character that has immense integrity that would eventually go on to sacrifice herself to save the people she loves and the world. And it's really great in this press conference that they really talked about how much effort and thought was put into this movie because, again, we've waited for a pretty long time to get a solo Black Widow film. And I'm excited for everybody to watch it. It comes out publicly July 9th, both on Disney Plus Premier Access and in theaters. Be sure to let me know how excited you are about the film in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the latest videos. Don't forget to like the video, and for live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.